Hi, my name is Songwidow, and this is the Affliction solo challenge to unlock its hidden artifact appearance. Done without that cheater ring. Yeah. Okay, so I'm done. If you don't want to listen to the commentary, the fight breakdown, talent choices, etc., there is a timestamp on screen for you to jump ahead to my kill of the fight. Thanks for coming. Okay, those still here, let's get right into it. Artifact-wise, I had 44 traits in Affliction, the new 4 traits, as well as an extra point in Shadowy Incantations and Perdition. This fight has an insane amount of movement because you will be kiting one of the bosses for practically the whole fight. Because of this, there is very little opportunity to stand still and cast, so the build I chose reflects this key characteristic of the fight. So onto the talents, going to do them in reverse order than I did the other challenges because their benefits are dependent on subsequent rows, so it just makes more sense to do it in reverse. For the last row, take Soul Effigy. It gives you twice as many targets to dot up as you're running around, which means more damage on the guy trying to kill you. Sixth row, take Supremacy, specifically Doomguard. You need it to interrupt. You will also be using his cripple ability to slow the boss regularly throughout the fight. Fifth row, Burning Rush is mandatory. I basically pop this at the start of the fight and leave it up until the kiting boss dies. Fourth row, take Siphon Life. It gives you one more thing to cast while moving as well as regenerate a ton of life. Siphon Life single-handedly offsets keeping Burning Rush active the whole time. Third row, Mortal Coil for the 3-second fear. Even though there is a ton of kiting, the CC gain from Mortal Coil, as well as the downtime to pump Unstable Afflictions into the boss, outweighs the extra distance you could gain if you chose Demonic Circle instead. Second row has 2 choices, Contagion or Absolute Corruption. Contagion is good for the very short periods where you can crank out several Unstable Afflictions. However, in my attempts, I felt in the last 2 phases I was not using Unstable Affliction enough to justify Contagion. In addition, with all the kiting, the effigy is sometimes only in range for a couple of casts, and the Absolute Corruption ensures that you can keep all your dots up on both targets as much as possible. With Absolute Corruption will continue to chip away at the boss and the odds even while you're focused on more important matters. And lastly, for the first row, Writhe in Agony is the best choice. The other 2 require standing still for long periods to get any benefit from them. This allows Agony, your hardest hitting dot after Unstable Affliction, to stack up to 20 on both the boss and the effigy. It's hands down your best option here. Onto gear. My item level was 907 when I killed this. Not gonna lie, the more damage you can do, the better. Legendaries. If you have Sacrolash, the Corruption Ring, I both envy and hate you. The slow effect makes this fight stupidly easy. If you have the ring, obviously use it. But this is a tutorial for how to do it without Sacrolash, so I'm assuming you don't have this ring. The next 2 best legendary options are Pillars of the Dark Portal, the Portal Eggs, and Cephas's Secret. We'll go over to how to fully utilize them in the fight discussion. The Affliction Helm is another good one given how reliant you are on Agony to deal the majority of your damage, so it's a solid choice if you're lacking one of the other 2 legendaries I used. Consumables. Flask, be sure to pre-pot with a DPS potion, use health potions over health stones, food buffs, augment runes, and be sure to grab some drums for a discount heroism, meaning it's 25% haste instead of 30, but every little bit helps. Alright, on to the fight itself. And this is a long discussion, a lot longer, a lot more detailed than the other couple of videos. So the fight itself consists of 3 kiting phases with a sort of down phase in between each of the kiting phases. The main boss you're going to be focusing on gains a stacking buff that increases the speed at which he runs, as well as the damage he deals. If the boss ever gets within melee range of you, he will hit you extremely hard, most likely killing you, especially if it's later in the fight, even through your unending resolve if you had that up. When that boss reaches 33%, he stops chasing you, becomes immune, and regenerates life. When he heals back to 66% health, he re-engages and starts chasing after you again. Each subsequent kiting phase adds a new layer of complexity to how you handle the fight. After 3 kiting phases, the boss will actually die, and then you need to finish off the other boss sitting in the middle to complete the challenge. Phase 1 is just the kiting phase. If you can master the kiting path and make it consistently out of phase 1, you figured out the hard part of the fight and you should be able to learn the next couple of phases pretty easily. You will wipe quickly several times before getting comfortable with the kite path. The extra mechanics that come in phase 2 and 3 aren't as difficult to handle as actually kiting the boss is. And again, that's all phase 1 consists of, so you'll get lots of practice at that. If the boss ever reaches you, especially with higher stacks, he hits you extremely hard as mentioned, probably killing you. If you manage to survive the blow, he also knocks you up in the air and back away from him. So if you're near an edge, you'll be thrown off and also die. In conclusion, do not want to let him reach you. The main challenge is dealing enough damage to him while also running away from him as long as you can. And this is an interesting balance because the more damage you can deal, the less kiting you'll have to do and the quicker the phase ends. Conversely, the faster you can run or get away from him, the longer you can stay in the phase to deal more damage if that's what is lacking. A big hurdle to your kiting is the fighting platform itself. It is a giant circular room and you're mainly running on the perimeter in a giant circle. Meanwhile, he's cutting corners and bridging that gap quicker than you can get away from him. Occasionally, the way the environment is laid out, he bugs out and either runs through the ground itself or outright teleports to you and ends your attempt. You just have to deal with it. So to get away from him, you have many lines of defense. Your first line of defense for kiting is Burning Rush. You should keep this thing going basically the whole fight. If you have the 2 Siphon Lives ticking, one on the boss and one on the effigy, you will easily be regenerating enough life to offset the 4% health per second to keep this thing up. Burning Rush will single-handedly keep him at bay for the majority of the phase. Your second line of defense is your Gateway. I set it up as shown on screen. As I run around the room counterclockwise, I use it right before he's about to hit me to quickly get 40 yards away. This is why having Pillars of the Dark Portal is really handy. You can use the Gateway twice per phase, approximately, in this manner instead of just once. Your next line of defense is your Doomguard's Cripple. Unfortunately, this fight employs PvP duration to the cripple, so it only lasts for 3 seconds, not the full 30 seconds like it did in the Demonology Challenge. Typically, you will use your cripple as a way to dump unstable afflictions into the boss or an ad later in the fight. Cripple buys you time, basically, and in phase 1, I use it right as I enter a gateway so that I can turn around and dump as many shards as I can into the boss. Your last line of defense is Mortal Coil. Similar to Cripple, it buys you a few seconds to dump unstable afflictions, or to escape if he's moving that fast. If you have Cephas's Secret, not only do you have a 10% movement speed advantage at all times, but every time you pop Mortal Coil on the boss or interrupt a cast, and more on that part later, the proc triggers and you get a burst of haste and 70% movement speed for 10 seconds. When he comes out of Mortal Coil, run away for a short bit, dump 1 or 2 more unstable afflictions if you have the time, and then continue on running. The extra speed boost is pretty handy in general for this fight. So we're going to talk about the kiting path I chose and staying alive, and then we'll talk about doing as much damage as you can to get through the phase 1 as quickly as possible. Position yourself 40 yards away towards the other end of the circle at the start of the fight. You can use your gateway marker to approximate how far 40 yards is, but don't actually cast it. You'll have to replace the one you plan to use for the fight if you do, so just use it as a measuring stick. When the boss first engages, start your DPS rotation. Use your Doomguard's Cripple early to slow him down. When he's slowed, try to dump as many shards and cast Unstable Affliction as much as you can. When he's starting to get near you, turn about and run around the pool pond thing behind you. I would recommend popping your Burning Rush Summer in this run, but not from the start of the fight. The reason is, if you pop it too soon, you'll get too far ahead of him, and he's cutting corners, which means you'll just be wasting that gap in between you. As you finish circumventing the pool, turn around and Mortal Coil him. This is another good opportunity to dump some shards. When he comes out of the Mortal Coil, run towards your other gateway. Do not take the gateway. At that point, I then ran around the stalagtite, whatever it's called, and back towards where you started. This will be the first time you'll use your gateway. Click your gateway and also pop your Doomguard's Cripple. This is another opportunity to dump shards. Run around the stalagmite again, and as you need your gateway, use your Mortal Coil, dump more shards. By now the boss should almost be reaching 33%, so you can either run in a straight line away from him, or if you have the portal legs, use that to fake him out like I did in the kill video. If you're taking too sharp of a radius of a path, and the boss is getting dangerously close to you, pop Unending Resolve. This actually happened in my kill video, and it saved the attempt. Luckily for me, I was planning to use Mortal Coil shortly thereafter and could regenerate the life, thus maintaining Burning Rush, but it is also the perfect time to use a health stone or a health pot if you survive. As you are running around the room, purple pools may spawn where you once ran. Running through these pools greatly slows you down and deals damage to you. Keep an eye out for them and adjust your kiting path as necessary to avoid running through them. If after following my kite path you still haven't gotten out of phase 1, then here's a couple tips to maximize your damage. At the start of the fight, pre-pot when he says, "I obey." Get your soul effigy out, agony the boss and the effigy. Somewhere in this little bit, use your Doomguard's cripple. Dump as many shards as you can before he reaches you. When you finally do have to move, then apply your other dots. Again, don't apply your other dots until you have to move. Unstable Affliction is a higher damage per execute time, and you have to stand still in order to cast it. While you're moving, you've got nothing better to do than cast instant casts, but while you're standing still, you really want to be focused on dumping your shards. Save your reap stacks for whenever you're planning to CC the boss and dump shards. Something that happens occasionally but not consistently enough to rely on is that the boss will aggro to your Doomguard at the start. This gives you the time to apply all of your dots and then dump all your shards. When the boss finally refixates on you, be sure to cripple him for even more damage. You might even get to drain soul a couple of ticks if you're lucky. Continue reapplying your dots as you move around the pond. In general, when you're on this side of the circle, prioritize refreshing your dots on your effigy when you're near it. As you're running around the stalagmite, you will be out of range of it, and you'd hate to have any dots, especially a 20 stack agony, fall off while you're in the middle of nowhere. Don't worry too much about the pandemic refresh range. You've got nothing better to do than apply dots even if they aren't ready to be reapplied. In fact, it's preferable to refresh all the dots you can before you mortal coil or cripple the boss so that you can spend all that time dumping shards. So at this point, if you've managed to get through phase 1, great job. Learning to kite is the hard part of the fight. In the first down phase, the other boss, the one that's standing in the middle, spawns 3 sets of 5 adds. These adds slowly creep towards you, and if they reach you, they deal large amounts of damage. Sound familiar? The difference is they don't increase in speed, and they are really slow to begin with. The goal for fully utilizing these adds is to get them to die when the kiting boss is running through them, and so will trigger Soul Flame, dealing extra damage to him when he reactivates in the next phase. In addition, if you can stagger their deaths, you'll get many stacks of Wrath of Consumption, potentially even keeping it up the whole time. This means more damage to the boss and a shorter kite phase. With that said, you do not want to nuke them and kill them as quick as you can. What I'd recommend is casting 1 Seed of Corruption per set of 5, and then casting 1 Agony on each add to generate some shards, or a Siphon Life if you need to regenerate some health. Absolute Corruption will continue ticking on them and eventually kill them all, so after you've done these first applications, you can ignore them DPS-wise. You still have to kite them, of course. If you aren't too stressed out in the down phase, try to keep Agony on the Soul Effigy at 20 stacks. It will help to increase your damage going into the next phase. You can also put a few dots on the central boss, but really, when the kiting boss dies, he's pretty easy to finish off, so don't stress about that too much. Okay, so going into the second kiting phase. It starts after the middle boss finishes summoning the 3 sets of adds. The kiting boss reactivates when he reaches 66% health again. You now have 2 new mechanics to deal with at this time. The first is the adds, which we talked about. Basically, just don't run into them as you're kiting. Treat them as one of the purple pools and just avoid them. Their health bars are also kind of annoying to sift through as well. The second mechanic, and it's a guaranteed white mechanic, is the add you'll need to interrupt and kill. It is called Hand from Beyond, and it starts casting Grasp from Beyond. If the hand succeeds, you will die. This add spawns in relation to where the kiting boss currently is, not the stationary boss. It's a big pain in the ass because it always spawns on the opposite side of the room, meaning where you just came from. So if you're kiting in the middle of nowhere, odds are this hand will spawn over there. When it spawns, send your pet after it right away to ensure it's within range to interrupt. You'll only get to interrupt one of the casts because it is such a long cooldown, so the add needs to die before it finishes the second cast. Work your way towards it during the first cast if you can, interrupt it with the Doomguard. After you interrupt the cast is a good time to CC the kiting boss with a cripple or a mortal coil to give you enough stationary time to dump shards into the hand. After you have a few unstable afflictions rolling, you can continue kiting while applying the other dots if they weren't rolling already. These adds are also the best time to use your reap stacks from here on out. This kiting phase continues until the boss again reaches 33% health. This down phase spawns another 3 sets of 5 adds, with an additional 4th set that spawns shortly after the third kite phase begins. This down phase also introduces the last new mechanic to deal with, and that is the Rune of Summoning. The central boss throws a purple swirly somewhere on the floor that slowly decrease in size. You need to stand on them for approximately 3 seconds to absorb them. If you do not absorb them and they disappear on their own, they summon a Thing of Nightmare. This add hits really hard and has over 100 million health, meaning you aren't going to kill it. If one spawns, you can still continue with the fight. It just makes it harder. Since it is an aberration, that means you can banish it for 30 seconds at a time. Hopefully you are just about to kill the kiting boss, you don't have to find the time to cast a banish to keep it at bay. If you fail to soak 2 runes, another Thing of Nightmare spawns, which means you're going to white. So make sure to soak these runes of summoning. And just by the way, very original names, Blizzard. Hand from Beyond, Thing of Nightmare, Rune of Summoning. You couldn't come up with any more original names than those. Anyway, but you see the challenge that this mechanic adds. You got to find 3 seconds every so often to stand still while the boss is barreling towards you. When you need to soak, it is a good time to use a Cripple or Mortal Coil if you weren't able to get enough distance on him first. The third kiting phase begins when the boss regenerates to 66% health again. This time you gotta take him all the way to 0% before you're done with him though. I would recommend using your second potion and Heroism Drums after you reapply all your dots in this phase. When the kiting boss finally dies, the Hands from Beyond no longer spawn. If you made it this far, keep banishing the Thing of Nightmare if you had one spawn. Otherwise, finish off the small adds and keep soaking the Runes of Summoning. When the adds are cleared up, finish off the middle boss, and grats, you're done. Thanks for watching. I've also done similar tutorial videos for the Destruction and Demonology solo challenges. They aren't nearly as long because Affliction is by far the hardest of the 3 without the ring, of course. Be sure to look for those videos in the Untitled card. Thanks again for watching, and here's the kill video.
You're a fool to follow me, brother. The twisting nether feeds my strength. I have become more powerful than you could ever imagine!
I cannot let you unleash your power upon Azeroth Raced. If you do not yield, I will be forced to destroy you!
Destroy me? No, brother! Your blade will become my instrument!
What? What are you doing? No!
Kill this interloper, brother!